Under the scorching blaze of the Texas sun, a surreal scene unfolded on Highway 83. What should have been an ordinary day of heavy traffic turned into something far more extraordinary. Cars had slowed to a near standstill, and not because of an accident or any mechanical failure, but because something unexpectedly small and wild had captured everyone's attention. A tiny bobcat kitten, desperate and determined, had chosen the busy highway as its stage. The kitten, with its delicate paws and cautious eyes, refused to retreat. Instead, it blocked the road with an intensity that commanded both awe and concern. Officer Sarah Winters, a seasoned member of the Texas Department of Public Safety, had encountered her fair share of unusual calls over her 11-year career. But nothing had quite prepared her for this moment. As she approached the scene, her trained eyes quickly noted that the bobcat was not merely lost or injured. There was something deliberate in its behavior, as if it were trying to send a message. A silent, urgent plea for help. The glint of metal attached to the kitten's leg caught her eye immediately, and in that moment, Sarah realized that this was no random Animal Crossing. The tiny device hinted at a deeper mystery, one that lay somewhere beyond the horizon, waiting to be unraveled. The unfolding scene was cinematic in every sense. The shimmering asphalt reflected the relentless Texas heat, creating mirages that danced in the distance. Vehicles, ranging from lumbering trucks to sleek sedans, crawled along the highway with drivers and passengers alike oblivious to the drama unfolding on the roadside. Yet, as Sarah adjusted her worn Stetson to shield her eyes from the glare, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was no routine wildlife encounter. Her cruiser's dispatch screen flickered with the details of the call. A small, agitated creature had disrupted traffic on a major thoroughfare, a call that demanded immediate attention. Dispatch, this is Unit 247. I'm on my way to the wildlife incident at Highway 83, marker 143. ETA 3 minutes, she reported crisply, easing off the accelerator. Moments later, her radio crackled with additional calls from motorists. People were reporting that what they saw was not an ordinary bobcat. They described it as a juvenile animal, displaying behavior that was unusual, almost aggressive, in its insistence on remaining in the middle of a busy road. Officer Winters felt her interest peak. In her many years of service, she had learned that wild animals usually scurried away from danger, but this little bobcat seemed to be defying nature itself. As she neared the scene, Sarah noticed a cluster of vehicles that had veered off onto the shoulder. The drivers, now gathered in small groups, were animatedly pointing and capturing photos with their smartphones. Their excitement mingled with a deep sense of curiosity, yet all the while, they maintained a cautious distance from the unusual sight. Sarah parked her cruiser behind the last of the vehicles and activated her flashing lights to alert oncoming traffic to the hazard ahead. Stepping out into the oppressive heat, she felt the weight of the day pressing on her. The hot air hit her face like a tangible force, urging her to proceed with both care and determination. Adjusting her utility belt, Sarah approached a middle-aged man wearing a faded Dallas Cowboys t-shirt, a man who appeared to be taking charge of the situation by urging onlookers to keep a safe distance. "Afternoon, sir. Officer Sarah Winters with the DPS. Could you tell me what's happening here?" she inquired politely, though her tone was laced with urgency. The man, wiping sweat from his brow, replied, "Ma'am, there's a baby bobcat over yonder. It's been trying to cross for about 20 minutes now, then it retreats. It nearly caused a pileup when that semi had to brake hard to avoid it." Sarah nodded, absorbing the information. "Has anyone tried to approach it?" she asked, her voice low. "No, ma'am. It's wild, and it looks distressed, almost as if it's trying to call for help. I've never seen anything like it before," the man explained, his eyes reflecting both wonder and concern. Thanking him, Sarah moved cautiously toward the median, her hand resting instinctively on her holster. Despite her extensive experience with wildlife, she knew that even a young and seemingly vulnerable animal could act unpredictably when frightened. And then she saw it, a small bobcat kitten, no more than a few months old, with a dusty, mottled coat that blended perfectly with its surroundings. The little creature paced nervously at the edge of the median, its movements a series of quick, darting steps toward the roadway before retreating again when vehicles approached. This was no ordinary animal simply trying to cross the road. Its behavior was deliberate, almost as if it were running on a precise schedule. Taking a step back, Sarah retrieved her binoculars from the cruiser's console for a closer look. That's when she noticed the small device fastened to the bobcat's hind leg. A blue marker that seemed to bear significance beyond its apparent simplicity. It was as if the animal had been outfitted with a tool not used by standard wildlife services. A tool that held the key to a mystery waiting to be unraveled. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Officer Winters hurried back to her cruiser and placed a call to the Regional Fish and Wildlife Office. Within 20 minutes, a white pickup truck marked with the emblem of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department pulled up behind her. From the vehicle emerged Dr. Stephen Mitchell, a wiry man in his 50s whose weathered skin and keen eyes spoke of decades of experience. He had served as the regional wildlife biologist for over 20 years and was renowned for his ability to assess even the most baffling wildlife scenarios. "I appreciate your prompt response," Sarah said as they walked toward the median, carefully maintaining slow, non-threatening movements. "Officer Winters, I must say, this device on its leg, it's not one of our standard tracking collars," Dr. Mitchell observed as he peered through his own pair of binoculars. "Our wildlife services typically issue collars that go around the neck. This is different. Look closely, there's a blue marker with a number on it. RW7734. His voice was laced with both surprise and concern. "That isn't a typical wildlife tag. It appears to be an emergency location marker, the kind usually issued to hikers in designated parks. But why would a bobcat, especially one in the wild, have such a marker?" Before either officer could delve further into speculation, Dr. Mitchell pulled out his tablet and tapped through several screens with practiced ease. "I just spoke with the ranger station at Fortress Ridge State Park," he announced. "They reported that a hiker has been missing since yesterday. The hiker in question is Robert Whitley, 42 years old, an experienced outdoorsman. He had planned a 3-day solo hike but missed his scheduled check-in last night." At that moment, Sarah's instincts as a law enforcement officer surged forward. The marker number on the bobcat's leg matched perfectly with the initials of Robert Whitley. The RW in the marker corresponded to his name, while the number 7734 matched his campsite registration. Both officers exchanged a knowing look as they regarded the little bobcat that, against all odds, had remained in place and even emitted a series of urgent sounds. "This doesn't add up," Sarah murmured softly. "How did a bobcat come to possess a hiker's emergency marker?" Dr. Mitchell's eyes narrowed as he pondered the situation. "There might be an explanation," he said thoughtfully. "Let's see what we can piece together." He continued to review the ranger's records on his tablet. It appears that Robert Whitley is not just an outdoorsman. He is also a wildlife rehabilitator based in Austin, specializing in big cats. It's possible that the marker was part of a tracking system used during his rehabilitation program. But then, why is the marker on a bobcat? And why is that bobcat here on Highway 83? As if in response to their questions, the bobcat, now identified as a juvenile with a striking combination of wild instincts and learned behavior, turned its head. It stopped a mere 30 feet away from them, its eyes locking on the officers, and emitted that same urgent sound once more. Then, with an almost imperceptible motion, it took several purposeful steps toward the forest that bordered the highway. "Look at that," Dr. Mitchell said in a tone of astonishment. "It's as if the animal is trying to lead us somewhere." Sarah's heart raced with a mixture of apprehension and determination. "I'm going to follow it," she declared firmly. "If this creature knows where Robert is, I need to track it down immediately." "Hold on," Dr. Mitchell interjected. "If Robert is injured, we might need to be prepared with medical supplies." He quickly retreated to his truck and returned with a well-stocked backpack containing basic first aid, water, emergency rations, and a standard search and rescue kit. Without delay, Sarah radioed dispatch with an update. "We have a potential missing person case connected to a wildlife incident. Dr. Mitchell and I are investigating. I'm requesting additional units and search and rescue on standby." The dispatcher replied, "Backup is approximately 30 minutes away. Search and rescue teams are aware and will stage until you confirm." Sarah responded, "Understood," her voice resolute as she refocused on the path ahead. The bobcat, as if fully aware of the unfolding events, turned and began trotting toward the tree line. Every so often, it glanced back as if ensuring that the officers were still following. "Never in my years have I imagined that I'd be following a bobcat into the woods," Sarah muttered with a touch of disbelief as she guided her steps across the highway, directing bystanders to clear a safe path for her and Dr. Mitchell. The forest greeted them with a cool reprieve from the blazing heat. Under a dense canopy of oak and juniper trees, the temperature dropped noticeably, and the sounds of the highway faded into the background. The Bobcat maintained a steady pace, approximately 50 feet ahead, its small, agile form barely disturbing the natural order of the forest floor. "This is not typical behavior," Dr. Mitchell remarked, his eyes tracking the creature. "Wild bobcats, even those that are partially rehabilitated, tend to use more cover when navigating through such environments." Sarah nodded in agreement. "I see fresh boot prints here," she observed, pointing to a set of imprints in the soft soil. Prints that appeared to be from a man's hiking boot, likely a size 11 or 12. "These prints are fresh, maybe only a day old." The prints, combined with the disturbed undergrowth and scattered personal items, suggested that someone had hurried through the area not long ago. They continued following the bobcat's trail, its every movement deliberate and measured. About a mile into the forest, the path led them to a clearing where the signs of recent human activity were unmistakable. The undergrowth was disturbed, broken branches lay strewn about, grass had been flattened in several patches, and there were scattered belongings, a water bottle here, a torn backpack strap there, and most alarmingly, spots of dried blood were visible on several leaves. "It looks like someone passed through here in a hurry," Sarah remarked, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm. Dr. Mitchell pointed to a steep drop-off that had been hidden from immediate view. "Notice this steep edge at the clearing's perimeter," he said. "The bobcat has stopped pacing here, almost as if it senses something we don't yet see." The bobcat paced anxiously at the edge of the clearing, its eyes flitting back and forth between the officers and the drop-off. With a few more deliberate steps, it advanced to the brink, looked back at them in what appeared to be an expectant gesture, and then slowly moved toward the unseen danger below. Sarah and Dr. Mitchell exchanged glances. Without a word, they carefully made their way down the slope, using the trees and scattered rocks for support. The descent was treacherous, but the bobcat, moving with natural agility, seemed to have found its own secure path down the incline. The rugged terrain did not deter it. Instead, it navigated the rocky descent with an ease that belied its small size. At the bottom of the slope, they discovered a ravine approximately 30 feet deep. A small stream ran along the ravine's bottom, its gentle murmur contrasting sharply with the tense silence that had enveloped the area moments before. Partially hidden by a fallen tree, they soon made out a human figure. "Robert," Dr. Mitchell called out, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. The figure stirred, lifting an arm in what might have been a weak wave. Relief washed over Sarah's face. "He's alive," she breathed, and immediately, she radioed dispatch. "We have located the missing hiker in a ravine approximately 1 meter east of Highway 83 at mile marker 143. The subject is alive but injured. I'm requesting immediate medical evacuation." The dispatcher acknowledged, "Copy that, officer." Sarah then took a moment to assess the situation. "The slope here isn't too steep," she noted. "I'll go first." Dr. Mitchell quickly offered, "I have the medical supplies. Let's work together." Carefully, they began descending into the ravine, using every available natural foothold, trees, rocks, and even the fallen logs, to guide their way. The bobcat, as if following in solidarity, found its own path down alongside them. Its movements were graceful and sure, even on the rugged terrain. When they finally reached the bottom, they found Robert Whitley, conscious yet clearly in distress. His leg was trapped under a heavy fallen tree, and his face was ashen, evidence of exposure and severe dehydration. Despite his evident pain, his eyes brightened as he saw the bobcat approaching. "Nova," he whispered weakly, a name that seemed to embody hope and resilience. Nova, the bobcat, approached cautiously, its little body trembling but its gaze steady. With a gentle nudge, it pressed its head against Robert's outstretched hand, as if offering comfort in a time of dire need. Dr. Mitchell immediately began examining Robert, his calm expertise in full display. "We have a compound fracture of the right tibia, possible concussion, and clear signs of dehydration," he reported in a measured tone, though his eyes betrayed his concern. "He's stable for now, but we need to get him to proper care as soon as possible. Robert, can you tell us what happened?" Sarah asked softly, kneeling beside him. Robert took a shaky breath before recounting the extraordinary series of events. "I was tracking Nova," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's part of my rehabilitation program, a final wilderness assessment before her planned release. We were making excellent progress until last night when a sudden, violent storm hit. Lightning struck a nearby tree, and Nova bolted as any wild creature would. I followed her trail, but then the tree, weakened by the lightning, fell on me. I couldn't reach my emergency beacon in time, so I attached my location marker to her tracking harness. I trusted that she would somehow find help." Sarah and Dr. Mitchell exchanged astonished glances. "You trained a bobcat to find help?" Sarah asked incredulously. Robert managed a small laugh that quickly turned into a grimace. "Not in the conventional sense," he explained. "I didn't train her like a dog. Instead, I worked with her natural instincts. I created associations. Roads mean humans, humans mean help, and the tracking device signifies my location. It was a desperate gamble, but it worked, if only just." In what felt like a surreal blend of fate and determination, the next hour passed in a blur of urgent activity. The search and rescue team arrived with proper medical equipment and a specialized stretcher designed for ravine extractions. As the team began the delicate work of freeing Robert's leg from under the fallen tree, Nova stayed close by, watchful yet remarkably non-interfering. With every passing moment, the bond between the man and the animal became more evident. "Please, someone needs to look after her," Robert pleaded weakly as he was carefully lifted onto the stretcher. "Nova isn't ready for full release yet." Dr. Mitchell immediately stepped forward, his tone resolute and compassionate. "I'll take personal responsibility for her until you're fully recovered," he promised, adding, "Your recovery base will be your campsite at Fortress Ridge, Site 7734. Robert's face softened with gratitude, and even amidst the pain, a smile began to emerge as he was carried up the ravine. In the days that followed, local headlines quickly picked up the remarkable tale, "Man's Life Saved by Bobcat Companion." The story spread like wildfire, eventually capturing the attention of national media outlets. Reporters marveled at the extraordinary rescue, an animal rehabilitator saved by the very creature he had been preparing for release. The narrative of Robert Whitley and Nova the Bobcat resonated deeply with audiences, symbolizing the unexpected ways in which nature and human compassion can intertwine. 3 weeks later, still deeply moved by the events that had unfolded on that fateful day, Officer Sarah Winters found herself driving to the Austin Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, a sprawling facility set on 20 acres just outside of Austin. The center, with its modern buildings and expansive naturalistic enclosures, stood as a testament to the community's commitment to wildlife conservation and rehabilitation. A young volunteer greeted Sarah warmly and led her through sunlit corridors to a bright room where Robert Whitley now sat in a wheelchair. His casted leg rested on a sturdy stool, yet his eyes shone with an inner strength and a quiet pride. "It's good to finally meet you properly," Robert said with a warm smile as he extended his hand. "Last time, I was a bit indisposed, but here we are." Sarah shook his hand firmly and replied, "Please, call me Sarah." Robert continued, "I must say, you handled that compound fracture better than most people handle a paper cut. Adrenaline really is a wonderful thing." They shared a laugh, a moment of genuine connection born from their extraordinary shared experience. Robert's voice then took on an excited tone as he invited Sarah to witness something truly remarkable. "Why don't you come see for yourself? We're about to start Nova's afternoon training session." Eager to learn more about the animal that had not only saved his life but also challenged conventional wisdom about wild creatures, Sarah followed Robert out to a large enclosure. There, waiting in the soft afternoon light, was Dr. Mitchell. "I've been coming down twice a week to help with Nova's progress," Robert explained, noting Sarah's expression of awe. "She's growing so quickly. Her kitten proportions are giving way to the lean, defined muscles of adolescence. She's truly thriving." Inside the expansive enclosure, designed to mimic a natural habitat complete with rocks, trees, and a small stream, Nova moved with an air of both grace and determination. Observing her closely, Sarah could see that every step she took was filled with purpose. The bobcat's movements were fluid and deliberate, a blend of wild instinct and learned behavior. "She's growing fast," Sarah observed, marveling at how naturally the animal navigated the space. "Nova seems to recognize you," Robert remarked suddenly, drawing Sarah's attention. "Is that unusual?" she asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. "Not really," Robert replied. "Most wild bobcats don't form bonds with humans unless they've had extensive contact. But Nova is different. She's been raised around people. She's learned that roads mean help, and that humans, in turn, can mean safety. It's almost as if she remembers you from that day on the highway." Sarah's heart swelled with a mix of admiration and disbelief as she studied Nova's intelligent, golden eyes. Curiosity and compassion led Sarah to ask the question that had been weighing on her mind. "What happens to Nova now?" she inquired gently. Robert exchanged a thoughtful glance with Dr. Mitchell before responding, "That's the complicated part. Nova's situation challenges everything we thought we knew about wildlife rehabilitation. Typically, our goal is to minimize human contact and eventually release an animal back into the wild. But Nova has demonstrated such unique abilities, a capacity to navigate both her wild instincts and the world of humans, that some of us are proposing an entirely new approach." Dr. Mitchell added, "We're developing what we're calling the Wildlife Ambassadors Program. The idea is to work with animals that exist in that delicate space between wild and domesticated. They can serve as living examples of conservation, educate the public about native wildlife, and even help us rethink how we approach rehabilitation. Nova could very well be the program's first ambassador." As Nova moved through a series of enrichment puzzles strategically placed throughout her enclosure, her problem-solving abilities became evident to everyone watching. The bobcat interacted with each challenge with both curiosity and determination, reinforcing the idea that she was not only a survivor but also an extraordinarily intelligent animal. For Sarah, who had seen countless incidents in her 11 years of police work, this encounter was nothing short of transformative. "I never imagined I'd witness something like this," she confessed quietly to Robert. "Today, you and Nova have shown me that sometimes, the wild isn't as black and white as we think. It's full of surprises, complexity, and undeniable beauty." As time went by, the publicity surrounding the rescue grew. Donations poured in, enabling the Wildlife Ambassadors Program to secure funding for the next 3 years. The governor's office even called to extend a special commendation to both Robert and Sarah at an upcoming state conservation gala. "I told them that Nova deserves the honor, not me," Robert insisted modestly. Dr. Mitchell chuckled and added, "They're even using Nova's image on a new wildlife conservation license plate." The unexpected recognition only deepened the sense of wonder that had begun on that fateful day along Highway 83. 6 months later, the culmination of these events was celebrated with the grand opening of the Texas Wildlife Ambassador Center. Officer Winters, now officially assigned as the department's representative, attended the ceremony with great anticipation. The center was a marvel, designed with naturalistic habitats that provided ample space for each animal, while also offering visitors the chance to learn about native Texas wildlife through interactive displays and live demonstrations. Educational panels detailed the stories of various animals, including those that had been injured, those that could not be fully released back into the wild, and most notably, Nova, whose unique blend of wild instincts and human association made her the center's star attraction. During the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Robert Whitley, now fully recovered, led the proceedings with a mixture of pride and humility. "Today, we celebrate not only the success of our rehabilitation efforts but also the extraordinary partnership between humans and wildlife," he declared before inviting Sarah to join him at the podium. "Officer Winters," he said warmly, "represents the very best of human compassion. On that day, you didn't dismiss a small animal as unimportant. You recognized the intelligence and intent in its actions, even when they came in the most unexpected form." The crowd listened in rapt attention, moved by the story of how a desperate call for help had changed everything. After the ceremony, as the visitors slowly dispersed to explore the center's various exhibits, Robert led Sarah to a private observation area overlooking Nova's enclosure. There, the bobcat lounged regally on a rocky outcropping, completely at ease in her carefully designed habitat. "She's become quite the celebrity," Sarah remarked softly, noting how Nova's calm demeanor commanded both respect and admiration from all who watched her. In that quiet moment, as the afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, Sarah and Robert shared a reflective silence. "Do you ever wonder what she's thinking?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible over the gentle rustle of the wind. Robert smiled, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "Every day," he replied. "But I've learned to respect the mystery." Nova reminds us that animals aren't merely simplified versions of us. They are complex beings, with their own secrets, their own dreams. In her, we see the bridge between the wild and the human, a delicate balance that we must strive to understand and preserve. As twilight approached, casting long shadows across the center, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. In those fading moments of light, she reflected on how a routine call about a small animal had cascaded into a series of events that transformed lives. Not just Robert's or Nova's, but also the lives of countless others who would come to understand the intricate dance between humans and wildlife. "In 11 years of police work," she murmured to herself, "I've never encountered a case quite like this one." Robert laughed softly, his eyes twinkling with the memory of that first fateful day. "Once in a lifetime is enough, wouldn't you say?" he replied. Standing together in that moment, as Nova lifted her head from her rocky perch and approached the observation glass, her golden eyes met Sarah's once again. There was a silent understanding, a connection forged in the unlikeliest of circumstances, where every life was intertwined in ways that defied explanation. The grand opening of the center marked not an end, but the beginning of a new chapter. Nova, once the tiny bobcat that had blocked traffic on a sunlit highway, had now become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the unexpected bonds that can form between species. Her journey, from a desperate call for help to a celebrated wildlife ambassador, was a testament to the power of nature, the importance of human compassion, and the unyielding spirit of survival. In the days and months that followed, Nova continued to inspire visitors. Families, school groups, and wildlife enthusiasts flocked to the Texas Wildlife Ambassador Center to learn about her story and the broader mission of wildlife conservation. Educational programs were developed to highlight the delicate balance between wild instincts and human intervention. Researchers studied Nova's behavior, hoping to glean insights into how certain species adapt to an increasingly human-dominated landscape, and how these lessons could be applied to broader conservation efforts. Officer Winters, whose life had been irrevocably changed by that fateful call on Highway 83, became an advocate for conservation and community outreach. She regularly participated in events at the center, sharing her first-hand experiences and emphasizing the importance of paying attention to even the smallest signs of distress in the natural world. "Every creature has a story," she would say, "and sometimes, listening to them can change everything." Dr. Mitchell continued to work closely with Robert, contributing his expertise to refine the Wildlife Ambassadors program. Together, they developed a curriculum for educating both the public and fellow wildlife professionals on the complex relationship between rehabilitated animals and their wild counterparts. The program soon garnered statewide and even national attention, with proposals to replicate its success in other regions across Texas. Robert Whitley's story, intertwined with Nova's, served as a powerful reminder that nature often defies our expectations. His initial gamble, attaching a hiker's emergency marker to a bobcat's harness, had seemed desperate at the time, but it ultimately saved his life and reshaped the way people thought about wildlife rehabilitation. "I never imagined that one small decision could have such far-reaching consequences," he admitted during an interview at the center. "But Nova's success has taught me that sometimes, our most unconventional ideas hold the key to understanding the natural world." As the center flourished, so did the community it served. Visitors left inspired by the story of a tiny bobcat whose actions had bridged the gap between the wild and the human. Nova became a beloved ambassador, her image gracing educational materials, social media campaigns, and even a specially designed license plate issued by the governor's office. A constant reminder that nature's mysteries can sometimes lead to the most unexpected acts of heroism. In the quiet hours of early evening, when the center's lights were dimmed and the day's visitors had long since departed, Officer Winters would often return to Nova's enclosure. Sitting on a bench beneath a sprawling oak tree, she would watch Nova as the bobcat padded gracefully along the enclosure's perimeter. In those solitary moments, Sarah felt a profound connection to the creature, a bond that transcended words and spoke to the heart of what it meant to be truly alive, both as a human and as part of the natural world. Over time, the Wildlife Ambassadors program expanded its scope, incorporating a range of species that, like Nova, occupied a unique space between wildness and domestication. The program's success led to collaborations with universities, environmental organizations, and government agencies. Workshops, seminars, and research projects flourished, all inspired by the unanticipated lessons learned from a bobcat that once blocked a busy Texas highway. Today, as visitors continue to stream through the Texas Wildlife Ambassador Center, the legacy of that extraordinary day endures. Nova's journey from a desperate call for help on a sunlit highway to becoming a celebrated symbol of conservation encapsulates the unpredictable beauty of nature. It reminds us that sometimes, the most profound stories are found in the smallest moments. Moments that, when given a chance, have the power to change lives and inspire generations. In the final analysis, the tale of Officer Sarah Winters, Dr. Stephen Mitchell, Robert Whitley, and Nova the Bobcat is not just a story about a missing hiker rescued in an unlikely manner. It is a narrative that challenges our assumptions about what it means to be wild, to be human, and to exist in a world where the boundaries between the two can blur in the most unexpected ways. It is a celebration of resilience, ingenuity, and the enduring power of compassion, qualities that define not only the characters in the story, but also the very essence of life itself. As the sun set over the Texas horizon on that unforgettable day, it cast long, dramatic shadows across Highway 83, a silent witness to the convergence of fate, determination, and the extraordinary bond between a man and a wild animal. And as the stars emerged in the twilight sky, they too seemed to whisper a quiet promise, that every life, no matter how small, holds within it the power to change the world.